Well, welcome to the November 3rd Policy Subcommittee meeting here. I think the first order of business is to say our pledge of allegiance to the flag. Roll call? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Deborah.
Mr. Dias?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
I'm here.
Ms. Pereira?
Here.
Now let's do the pledge.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Okay. I should follow the sheet, Deborah, but I always try to,
Gonna make it his own.
yeah.
You're changing it up.
I'm a blues musician, I'm used to improvising, Deborah, is there any citizens' input for tonight's
There
meeting?
is not, Mr. Corey.
Okay. So let's move on to item number 3, discussion. Item 3, number 1, discussion and vote to refer Title IX Sexual Harassment Grievances Procedure.
Okay. So, this is coming from changes at the federal level. Back in, it was actually, I think in April of '24, there were some changes made to Title IX at the federal level, and then in January of this year, there were more changes that actually reverted back to the 2020 Title IX definitions and things like that. So we're essentially updating just some minor parts of our procedures to make sure that they're in line with the current federal Title IX regulations that we have to follow, and those are, like I said, reverting back to the 2020 regulations. In Title IX, in our Title IX grievance procedures, really the only change in this is that a definition of what constituted sexual harassment was changed at the federal level, so we just had to update our language in order to have the same definitions in there.
So I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but one of these is past, one is present?
Yes,
Is that what,
so
which is which?
The one with the actual policy listed on the top right corner
This
is
is
the
the
current,
one. Okay, gotcha.
current one, and then the other one that we have is our draft new policy.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Which one's the new one?
This one, the one with the numbers.
That's the new one.
So, a couple things. Under the 2020 Title IX regulations, sexual orientation and gender identity are not categories that are protected under Title IX. So, under the 2020 regulations, if you feel like you're being discriminated against or harassed because of your sexual orientation or your gender identity, you can't file a complaint under Title IX. However, you can file it under our civil rights policy, which is one that we're going to get to after this. Okay, so the first change for definitions is that sexual orientation, gender identity are no longer covered in Title IX, so we've removed references to those terms. The other change is the definition to sexual assault, and let me see here. Basically what we ended up doing with this part is fondling, if you look at in the current policy, is used. That is no longer used. The term has now been updated to criminal sexual contact, and there's some more descriptors included to describe exactly what that means. So if you look at our current policy, current Title IX policy on page 1, under the scope section, the second paragraph, which reads, in the current policy, the Title IX sexual harassment grievance procedures apply only to allegations of sexual harassment under Title IX, which includes harassment based on sex, sexual orientation, and/or gender identity, and is defined in the sections below. That middle part that says which includes harassment based on sex, sexual orientation, and/or gender identity has been removed in the new policy, the proposed policy. We removed the sexual orientation and gender identity, so that was the only change on that page. Then the other changes happen on page 2 of our current policy. If you look all the way at the bottom of page 2 of our current policy, the very last section has the definition of sexual assault. And that reads, an offense that meets the definition of rape, fondling.
Oh. Oh, sorry, you weren't invited to the
Okay,
meeting.
thanks for listening at all times.
Right?
Put that over there so I don't hit that button. Apologize about that. So our current policy reads sexual assault, an offense that meets the definition of rape, fondling, incest, or statutory rape as used in the FBI's uniform crime reporting system and set out below. What we have in our new policy is that the word fondling has been removed and criminal sexual contact has been added. Then on our current policy, the second bullet point gives a definition of fondling because we've removed that from our proposed policy. We don't have a definition for fondling, but we do have a new updated definition for criminal sexual contact. So that you'll see on the bottom of page 2.
Alright, so this is the new one.
Yep. Those are really the only substantive changes in the policy. So it was really just aligning the language to the federal definitions and making sure that they match up. But other than that, it was just really those changes on the first couple pages. Nothing else as part of the policy, because this really gets into the descriptor of our process. How to file a Title IX complaint, the process that we follow after a complaint is filed, how we handle investigations. None of that has changed. So the rest of the policy has remained the same. So it's really just those removing some categories, which we have added to our civil rights policy, and then updating a definition.
Great. That's cut and dry.
Yeah, luckily this one was fairly minor, as opposed to some of the other changes that we've seen with Title IX. 2020 and 2024 were some major changes, but this one is, and to be honest, it's not really even Title IX, it was more of that FBI's uniform crime reporting system where the definitions come from. They updated their definitions to use criminal sexual contact, so then everything that uses that system has to make updates as well.
So does every state have to comply with these changes?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So it's across the board in public education?
Yep, yeah. Anywhere that receives federal funding, you have to abide by the Title IX law and policies, so yeah, and they
Okay,
have to
very good.
make
Mr.
these changes
Dias?
as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I went through the policy manual just before this meeting, I saw some duplicate policies like AC. I don't have my laptop today, but it looked like just from the scratching the surface that we have a bunch of random policies that are similar to this that look the same. So if someone's going through the policy manual, they could look at some different policies that look very similar to what we have here. Who's in charge of maintaining the policy manual for the district?
I don't know.
Would it be yourself, or would it be this?
I would say the superintendent.
I think in general, not even just for this policy, I think we should just take a look through and make sure we don't have old policies in general that are either have been already amended by the school committee or have been struck down by the school committee, or may be similar to this right here, because I just don't want a staff member to go look at the policy manual and see different things and get confused as what they're doing. So I think that's something we should take a look at, and if possible, we can report that to the committee. Next question is actually on the end of the proposed new policy that we have here on the last page. It's highlighted in yellow. I'm assuming, I thought that would be something we would discuss today. Like for investigators, decision makers, the appeal officers. Seems like we don't have anyone there. Is that something we're gonna?
Yeah, so if this gets approved to the full committee, we would have like a more formal complete draft that would actually have those titles included. The old policy does. Investigators, we actually don't identify. They kind of can be anyone, and sometimes we do actually go out to outside investigators. The decision maker, most often we use the building principal. The appeal officer has always been the superintendent. And then I believe the informal resolution facilitator can either be Title IX coordinator.
Which is
or-
yourself?
Yes. Actually, no, the previous policy had, for students, the director of guidance or an assistant superintendent, and for employees, it had an assistant superintendent or a superintendent.
Has that been what has been happening?
We haven't, since I've been the Title IX coordinator, we haven't conducted any informal resolutions under Title IX, so we haven't needed to, utilize that person. We also haven't had, actually no, we have had an appeal. Yes, we've definitely utilized all the other roles, but we've never had an informal resolution process under Title IX since I've been working here.
Okay. And for investigators, you said you would go outside, but that's usually your department.
Sometimes, yeah. Yep, sometimes, the Title IX coordinator can act as the investigator, or other times you just get a, completely separate third party to conduct a Title IX investigation.
The decision to refer a case to an outside, that's discretionary, that's not based in policy?
Correct, yeah.
What would be the discretion? I think there should be some general guidelines or just written down.
I mean, it could be a number of things. I mean, sometimes just the scope of a Title IX investigation would be, far too much for me and my team to handle, so we, do it outside. Other times, if we feel like there, could be claims of bias in an investigation, by having someone in district do it, it's helpful to get a, completely, separate third party with no attachment to the district. So it's really sort of a case-by-case basis, when we get Title IX complaints and then we decide to conduct an investigation.
And usually if there's like a re-review of a case, that would usually go to a separate person. Like the same person wouldn't look at a case twice, my understanding?
Do you mean under like an appeals process or?
Yeah, or any.
So, once an investigation is completed, and this is all within the policy, so an investigative report gets produced. Following an investigative report, there's a decision-making notice that gets sent out by the decision maker. If either party disagrees with the decision that's been decided in the investigation, they have the opportunity to appeal, and then that would go to the appeals officer. Once the appeal officer sort of makes their final determination, as far as I know, that's kind of the end of it. So there really wouldn't be a re-looking, I guess, outside of the appeal process. Everything sort of gets contained within the Title IX process.
It was my understanding, and not to get into specifics, there's been some cases that have been either looked at by an outside person after it's been originally looked at, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Okay.
But,
Okay. And that could be that they weren't, it wasn't a Title IX investigation. That could be a case.
Yeah, I off the top of my memory. Last question or last idea, and this may or may not go into sexual harassment itself, but it can. I think we need a fraternalization policy between students and staff, just something on the books, just to make sure we're up to date on our policies. So I don't know if that has to be something specifically in this, or if that's something we can research, just to have like a model policy. I think that would be good. Thank you.
Certainly, anything, Shelley?
No.
Madam Superintendent, so this is, the question that I have is, now that there's been a policy change in regard to these items, would it go out to the Director of Guidance to disseminate to the guidance counselors and the adjustment counselors? Do they need to be privy to these changes?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we would share widely with folks, that policy change, that particular language change. So they would receive it along with other members of the community, for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll revisit certainly some of the names, because, in this, in the original procedures, there are people's names and or positions, and so we would revisit that, so that people understand exactly who, make sure that we are internally following this.
Exactly.
And to make sure everybody knows who the contact people are.
Yeah,
So we would wanna
that-
make sure we get that out.
That was my concern, and my other concern is, as far as taking on new people, new staff, not only school teachers, but also paraprofessionals, are they gonna be trained in this new language as well?
So we have an online system that we use, ArcSed, And so any updates that we make to this policy that need to be reflected in that training, we will update the training, and then as new people are onboarded, they participate in that training.
Yeah, so each new paraprofessional specifically, the paraprofessionals are trained before they start their work or during the tenure of their work.
We have it, like, there's a time, there's a time during which, like,
Yes.
within the first X number of days of someone being employed, that we would expect them to finish the training.
Thank you. I yield.
I have a question.
Mr. Pereira?
Just touching back on what my colleague was saying on our different policies. Teachers, I'm assuming, operate, they operate under a contract, but also expectations. Is there anything written down that label that sort of teacher-student relationship and where it should?
In terms of policies, I know that there's social media policy does talk about sort of, blurring lines between, kind of, your professional status in school and sort of outside of school. I'm not aware of any other specific policies that, speak to that though.
So I think what you would find is that during orientations at schools, people are certainly given some guidelines, but it's not in policy form. So I think that if that's our next move, we would want to, kind of bring in some of those voices, collaborate with people on the committee, so that we can pull together some kind of draft policy for subcommittee review and then committee review.
To me, that seems like a good idea. I don't think it's an emergency situation, but it seems like a good idea.
Yep.
Other than that, it's a little disheartening to me that I'd be remiss, I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it. It makes me sick that we're taking a step back in protecting children, in my opinion, as one member. But we don't make all the rules, do we? We just have to play by them, which brings us to how we're gonna kick back, which I appreciate. So with that I yield.
That's one
Mr.
follow-up.
Guys?
Just on my colleague's point about training, just for example, I know some districts, they just hand you the sexual harassment policy and then they wash their hands. What do we do specifically for training for staff for?
So we use an online platform through ArcSedlytics, and so our policies, federal guidelines, state, all kinds of things around FERPA, around HIPAA, around all kinds of things, what we expect people to know in terms of food allergies in schools. Everything is in one, it's a module, set up in modules, and people go through and then, they're 25% complete, 35% complete, and then we continue to get updates saying that people are, here are all the people who are done, and then these people are only half done, these people haven't started. So we give people time during the school day. At the start of the year, during our orientation day, there is allotted time for all employees to complete. And then after that, people don't get it done that first day. The expectation is they're getting it done on their free time. And then we have to just keep getting back to people to say, you still haven't done it.
Like free time during the school day, you mean?
Or after hours, it's an online module that people can complete.
The only issue I could see, like, unions being a little, like, don't do it.
But we
right?
give time, so if we say, here's an hour, do this, and people do not complete it in that hour, and it only takes an hour, then we gave you an hour. If you didn't use it, then you have to do it on your free time.
That's fair. Last question is on punishment. Is it something that varies, or is it pretty set in stone what the punishment is? Or?
Under Title IX?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a case-by-case basis. It really depends on kind of what the complaint is, what the allegations are, and then what the findings are from the investigation.
Right. If there's like a finding that's like the allegations are credible, what would be usually like? What would the punishment range from? Like.
Certainly, dismissal or termination, could be on the table. For like staff members, for students, up to and including, suspensions and other things like that. But yeah, I mean, it really, it depends on, is the claim, a sexual harassment claim? Is it a sexual assault claim? I mean, a lot of different, I think, factors at play when you come into sort of the next steps after the investigation.
Right, but to meet the claims, correct me if I'm wrong, but to meet the claims for a Title IX, it has to be something that's egregious. Like, there's certain criteria that needs to be met for the action that was done. It has to be something that's...
Well, it has to meet the definitions
Agreed,
that
right.
are in here, so,
And if I may, I think, first of all, to talk about how the trainings happen, because I do them all the time, you're right. You can literally click, 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 sign, and not read any of it. It's not right. I'm sure people do it,
Yeah.
but there's not much we can do about it. We could sit them all in a lecture for an hour. If they don't want to listen, they're not going to listen. You know what I mean? So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
so I think maybe what you're referring to, the definition of sexual harassment under Title IX, there's 3 definitions. One of them is any instance of, unwelcome conduct on the basis of sex that is sufficiently severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. So it has to meet all 3
Right.
of those to meet the definition
Right,
of
so
sexual harassment.
that's what I was that was exactly what I'm looking for. So I guess
Okay.
the point I'm trying to make in terms of punishment, because again, if you're committing an action that the district sees as severe and pervasive, I think the punishment should be termination. And I think that should be the only punishment when it comes to this specific
Can I give you an example?
definitions.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
Because this, I think if I put it into this context, it'll make more sense to why maybe there'd be different circumstances. Okay, so sexual harassment. Let's say, for example, I'm sitting here in this room with you guys, and Mr. Corey decides to tell you a joke. The joke's inappropriate, the joke talks about sex, the joke makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I go and report and say, you know what, this happened, and I'm extremely uncomfortable. They may speak to Mr. Corey about it. He hasn't done anything bad yet. But he kind of laughs it off, and we're around again, and he decides he's going to do that again to you, and you laugh, and you're blowing it up, and I again am uncomfortable. That is sexual harassment.
Right.
Now, that is not the same as Mr. Corey pushing me against a wall and grabbing at my body parts
agreed,
things like that.
agreed.
Now, that type of thing, to me, immediate termination. If you're found guilty, you're out. That's absolutely 100%. In other cases, sometimes it may be, okay, look, we're going to suspend you because we talked about it once. You didn't take it serious. Now we're going to suspend you. You're going to come back to work. You're not going to be telling jokes like that anymore. You're going to be appropriate. So that's, I think sometimes, like we're talking about sexual harassment. Don't get me wrong. It all should be gone. Okay, but I think it's such a large spectrum, because sometimes that guy who's telling the joke doesn't even think he's doing anything wrong.
Right. No,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
think we're 100% on the same
Yeah,
page. I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
My question is, like, the first like reference you about the joke. I don't think that would meet the requirements of a Title IX sexual harassment. I am under the impression that the 2 separate things, like there's sexual harassment, which is wrong, and then there's Title IX sexual harassment, which has a lot more. It has to be sufficiently severe and pervasive. So.
But what are the
Yeah.
words severe and pervasive? What does pervasive mean? It just means continuous, ongoing. So it doesn't mean penetration, it doesn't mean grabbing, it just means a behavior that is pervasive, which means behavior that keeps going over and over. So that could be a wide variety of things, is all I'm saying. That's why it's hard to be black and white when things are so much more complex, especially when we're dealing with things like this. But I certainly would agree that anybody found, and I would assume that would be the case, Dr. Curley, right? If we have somebody who's found guilty of actually touching or being inappropriate, they can find a job elsewhere. We'll send them on their way.
No,
But I understand why you can't just always put it down in black and white, because there may be that situation where you go, oh, this is why we shouldn't have put it in black and white. You know, we need to be a little more creative with our discipline, I think is also a better word than punishment, but, yeah. Anyway,
No,
with that I yield.
No, I understand where my.
But I
colleague's
understand what
coming
you're
from.
saying, for sure.
It's just, again, without getting into specifics, you hear stories or you hear the results of certain things and you start to question,
Yeah.
but again, we have to maintain our role. Thank you.
I don't listen to stories, I listen to facts. I research and I find facts, because Fall River's full of a lot of stories, Colin, a lot of stories.
Yep. Are we all set?
Trust me, I've heard them all, some about me.
Motion to refer to full committee?
Second.
Mr. Dias?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Ms. Flora?
Yes.
We on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so civil rights grievance procedure. As I mentioned, Title IX no longer
Which one,
covers.
Mr. Lally, which one is the new
Oh,
one?
This is the new one now.
current one has the actual ACRB listed on top.
Yeah, and
And
this
then
is
the
the new
proposed changes are, doesn't have anything.
I told you the whole thing was.
Title IX no longer covers gender identity and sexual orientation. So references to those categories were removed from Title IX and then updated to add to the civil rights grievance procedure. I will say, I think at some point, there probably should have been an update to the civil rights grievance procedure. The current one that we have on file was last approved or adopted by the school committee in 2022. So I do think that after the 24 Title IX changes, there probably should have been an update to this. So as a result, what you'll see is sexual orientation and gender identity is actually in the current policy in some spots. It is missing from one location, so we do need to update it. But yeah, just sort of interesting. If you're wondering why, hey, I'm looking at the current policy, it does have
Yeah.
sexual orientation, gender identity. I can't speak to that because I wasn't here, but I think that there probably should have been a change, back in 2024. So if you look at our current policy, the very first opening paragraph, it says, the Fall River Public Schools is committed to maintaining school environments free of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation based on race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, or disability. That is also in the new policy. However, the category of sex is also identified in the new policy, which is missing from our current policy. So the words sexual orientation and gender identity are in our current policy. The word sex is not, so that needs to be added. On the bottom of page 2, our current policy, the definition of discrimination. Interestingly enough, that definition does contain the word sex. It says discrimination means discrimination or harassment on the basis of race, age, color, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or religion, so on and so forth. That is exactly what the new policy is proposing. Again, those terms weren't taken out of our previous civil rights policy, so that really isn't a change. Then on our current policy, if you go to the top of page 2, it gives you the definition of harassment. Our current policy is missing the term sexual orientation and gender identity from that section, so those will be added. Current policy reads, harassment means unwelcome conduct on the basis of race, age, color, national origin, disability, or religion that is sufficiently severe, persistent, or pervasive, so on and so forth. That is missing, like I said, sexual orientation and gender identity, and those will be added for the new policy. And I believe that is actually the only changes. Those are the only areas where sexual orientation and gender identity show up in our policy, so it's just ensuring that those are added to our civil rights policy.
Mr. Lally, are these, it seems like they broadened the definition a little bit in the new policy. Are these in response to what's going on with our DOJ investigation?
No, so this is all just based on the changes at the federal level to Title IX.
All right, so that's consistent
yep.
with the other changes.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, had the other changes not been put into place or taken effect, we wouldn't need to update this policy.
Do you think this'll be favorable? Madam Superintendent, will this be favorable for our district in light of the DOJ stuff going on?
I don't think that there's much relationship between that particular investigation
Okay.
and these changes.
All right.
But I think that in general, the adjustment to the civil rights grievance procedure and, in that policy, I think certainly it makes sense to be able to make those adjustments in light of what was taken out of the other policy.
And so to my experience, as even being a former educator, a retired educator, in all of the orientation meetings that we ever had in assemblies, I hope that these procedures and policies are stated widely in each and every school, in each and every department, disseminated throughout the entire place. That's what I'm hoping for moving forward.
Yes.
Good.
I just had one
Ms.
question.
Pereira?
Who's our civil rights coordinator? Because I didn't see a name on either of them.
So that is something that I think we need to have some conversations about. I think technically it is me right now, but yeah, that is missing from the current policy.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And is that where you think it should lay, Dr. Curley?
So I think that in many ways, it makes sense to have the Title IX coordinator and the Civil Rights coordinator be the same person.
Yep.
But we are going to discuss it
Okay.
prior to Monday to make sure that whatever names and positions are put forward
Yeah.
are the ones that everyone understands to kind of make sense. I don't wanna be having those conversations.
I was just
after.
gonna
Yeah.
say, please, Monday, you're gonna come with the
No,
names,
no,
because
no,
any blank
absolutely.
spots, you realize, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Dias?
Was just gonna ask the same question. I'm not asking you to give the names now, but it seems like you had a few ideas of who you would put as the civil rights coordinator. Like, what positions would you also consider? If it wasn't the HR director.
So for me, it makes sense to keep it as it's been in practice. HR coordinator, HR director, but that is something that I'm open to discussing if there is another, another position that makes sense.
Sure.
I think that it's just one of these things that's kind of widely, even if someone didn't open a policy, I think that the first person that people would think of in this district and probably others, and in that way, I think it makes sense that people should kind of automatically know who that go-to person is. That doesn't mean we couldn't reestablish those expectations, but that's where it stands now.
Yeah, I think it should be one person as well. Actually, I think it should be one person as well. Last question on this, and this grievance procedure, I understand it's based off of like state law, federal law, but it's our procedure. Like, we could put in extra protections as a district policy if we wanted to, if we wanted to go above and beyond, and that's something I've always been a proponent of, specifically political affiliation. I know if you apply for a position here, you're protected based off of a political affiliation. I think that should be listed in the policy, and also I think it should be any individual who believes that any of their constitutional rights were violated, they should have the right to have a grievance as well, no matter even if they don't fall within a protected category. If they're an individual who believes their rights have been violated by the district in any way, I think that should be covered either within this policy or if it's something separate. And picking back off my previous line of questioning, and apologize I didn't have my computer today, but I believe there are also duplicate policies, not duplicate, but different policies that are similar to this within our policy manual as well. So just again, making sure we have, I think we should just have one policy and not different ones, just to make sure we're protected. I mean, just to make sure it's just clear. But if that's something we can look at and report out Monday, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Do you know what those policies are, which ones that you saw that were repeats?
Yeah,
Does that make
for
it
the,
helpful?
sure, for the sexual harassment one, it was like AC, it was a civil rights. I think it was AC or AC. I
think so too.
can email it to you after. And for like the sexual harassment, I think there was just an ACAB without the RA. But I'll make a motion to refer.
Second?
Mr. Dias?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yep.
Ms. Pereira?
Yes.
And so, that's good. We had two items on the agenda. We voted to refer both to full body for the next meeting. Moving on to number 4, new business. I did raise an issue for new business, Deborah. How do I propose that? So I did have an item I wanted to broach about our cursive writing policy. Is that in policy form, or is that just a practice that we've maintained, and are we still doing it? The last update I got on cursive writing was that it would be conducted once the MCAS Testing was finished in the spring, and then the last 2 to 3 months of the school year, it was conducted with grades 3 through 5.
Yes,
Is that still being carried out
Yes.
in every school?
yes.
No exceptions?
Yep, that is the expectation, and I know, I can grab it, but I know that that is something that reminders go out to schools, in the spring, that this is the expectation, but I don't believe it's in policy form, I think it is in practice.
Is there a way that we can make it into policy form so that it's upheld, not only now, but for, so that we can codify it?
Okay, that's something that we could take a look at, for sure. I will, we can do some work to see what other, if there's language out there from other districts that we want to start with as baseline, or if it's something we would just develop from scratch, that we could certainly bring forward, bring back here, and then, for some discussion, and then to full committee if it gets moved.
That sounds good to me, because I get a lot of interest out there. A lot of people are coming at me with that exact question. And, in the creative world, cursive writing continually appeals to the creative side of our brain. And in this new electronic age that we're all living, I just don't want children, any school-age child, to forget what it's like to sign their name, in cursive style, rather than just, given an electronic, auto pen.
No, I understand. It is something that we do. Each spring, I know that as a child, I remember what that was like, to learn cursive writing. And I'll tell you, it felt wildly exciting at the time, right?
Yeah.
Because it seemed like something adults did. It was like the first thing that you learned in school. That was like something that like your parents did.
You remember how excited you were when you were able to do it?
Absolutely. But I also know that I have teenage children. Holy moly, when my daughter had to sign her first paycheck, it was like, what? And they, we come from a school district that does some cursive writing, right? But not to the extent certainly when we were children.
Me and Colin went to Catholic school.
Yes.
It was a class. Was it a class when you were there?
I learned
Obviously
it.
much younger, but.
Yeah, no, it stopped like
It didn't
when I
stop
was in
around,
elementary.
my kids, good
But I
point.
learned it maybe for like 2 years, one or 2 years,
and then they just
it,
stopped, because my kids went to St. Mike's too.
Yeah,
No, we used to have to do the worksheets.
Yeah.
The worksheets. I love writing long notes to my kids in cursive and going, figure it out.
Yeah. But I also think that in psychological terminologies, I just think that the creative nature of the way people sign their own names is another way for them to solidify their own identity, who they are. That's my signature, nobody else's. So it just helps to, for self-concept purposes, I really think it helps a child to, give themselves a little bit of confidence, and it appeals to their creative side. And who knows what else might happen as a result. They might end up as great artists down the road, who knows, But thank you for, and will that come back to
It would come back to policy subcommittee.
potential
and I
discussion
think
at some point?
We certainly recognize that, and Mr. Dice has brought this up, a number of times, this idea of kind of revisiting policies. I'd like to revisit them in groups. This is what, something that we've talked about earlier, and I think what you're bringing up today, Mr. Dice, makes sense. Like, if we are revisiting policies, 5 or 6 at a time that fall into the same category, do there need to be 5 or 6 different policies? Could we streamline it so that it's, 1 or 2, or maybe it's 3 because they're just different enough? That work needs to be done, and then certainly additionally, bringing some new policies to this subcommittee is, what makes sense.
And so the last word I'll say is, before it even comes to that point right now, it is a practice still being carried out.
It's an excellent
Once all the MCAS regimen is done, and then they'll pick that up for the, the last couple of months of the year.
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I yield. Okay, number 5, I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Third.
Mr. Dias?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yep.
Ms. Coro?
Yes.